It's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
Should the Secretary of War fire fat generals?
Being fat is a choice. And don't tell me that, the generals are really busy doing brain work. They don't have time to exercise. That's bullshit.
It's also important to understand that leadership is a lot more than just fitness.
If you got the right mindset and you're a go-getter, then you're probably gonna be fine.
Gray zone warfare is here to stay. We do it in other countries. So now we're just getting a taste of our own medicine. To further help you guys understand this, let's first define gray zone warfare. Everyone sees the gear, the weapons, the night raids, the kicking in the doors, but what they never see is what's happening up here. The mind of a special forces operator.
We are exposed to situations where everything is designed to go wrong.
Today, I'm pulling back the curtain and we're gonna go over the mindset of a special forces operator and why those lessons matter way beyond the battlefield. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Green Beret Chronicles show. Today we have an interesting one for you guys. We're gonna cover a variety of topics, but before we get to that, if this is your first time watching me, my name is Dorleus, retired U.S. Army Green Beret, and the intent behind this segment, the intent behind this channel, the intent behind my entire being on YouTube is to coach, teach, and mentor the next generation of warfighters. So if you get any value out of this, like, subscribe, share the video. With all that said, guys, we're going to talk about the very first topic, which is going to be gray zone warfare, right? What is gray zone warfare? I'll go over it. I'll describe it. I'll give you some real life examples as what's currently taking place in the atmosphere around the world. And then you can share your feedback with me in the comment section like you guys always do. With all that said, guys, let's jump right into the first topic.
Let me interject here real quick. I got a couple of super chats on the Cash App from someone named Adam Shadoff, trying to bash my friend's coffee company, which is not good. Apparently he is offended because the coffee is called Dark Arts. Well, let me tell you something, dude. Dark Arts, if you would have watched the live stream on Sunday, the Dark Arts is spycraft, okay? So pull your panties out of your wad. That's what it refers to. And it's a coffee cup. You're looking down at the coffee because 99% of the world doesn't have handles on the coffee. If you want to look at something as a conspiracy, go for it. But before you do that, let me show you this. You don't go for my friends or family. I'll come for you. I'll ban your ass so fast you won't even know what happened. Globally sourced, mission ready. Good friend of mine, Dorleus, retired Green Beret. He's from Haiti. He was in New York City as a 13-year-old kid when the Twin Towers went down. 6 out of his 7 siblings have served this country. And he's got a foundation now. And if you notice, all the names of the coffee have something to do with a spy process. Dead drop, honeypot, brush pass, cold bump. If you knew anything, you'd know what he was talking about. He was on here talking about this very thing. Let me show you something else that the guy does. Okay? Look at this one. Dark Arts Coffee Foundation. He helps veterans get into housing and get veterans off the street. Okay? So if you want to make your $2 donations on Cash App and try to insult someone, you insulted the wrong frickin' guy. Dorleus is a damn good dude. Dark Arts Coffee Foundation.
War has changed. That's right. War as you know it has evolved. You might not see tanks crossing borders or soldiers storming beaches anymore, but make no mistakes, all right? Nations, several of them already at war. When you think about this statement, think about China, think about Russia, think about the United States, right? It's happening on your phone. That's right. This little thing that you stare at as you're walking down the street, getting ready to get hit by a car, right? It's happening. It's happening in cyberspace. It's happening in countries you've never heard of. This is gray zone warfare, the murky space between peace and literally all out war, right? Think about it, guys. War back in the days was pretty straightforward, right? If you think about, Civil War era, we would line up, we would face each other, we would shoot, and eventually somebody would die. Fast forward, World War II, trench warfare. Then you had Vietnam. Then you had Iraq, Afghanistan. But now the current battle space is evolving, guys. You don't even know that it's happening. Most of you guys are clueless as to what's going on around you. But don't get it twisted. It's happening. And what most people don't realize is special forces are on the front line of this fight. Even though the battlefield doesn't look like Iraq and Afghanistan, guys, we're there. We're operating in the shadows, all right? We're slinging lead, just not the type of lead you're thinking of. To further help you guys understand this, let's first define gray zone warfare. Gray zone warfare is not peace, but it's also not declared war. It's constant competition. Nations push, probe, sabotage, and influence each other, all without crossing that proverbial line that requires a nation to react forcibly, right? If you think of Ukraine and Russia, right? Once Russia crossed that line, Ukraine had to react with military force. But when they operate in the shadow, like we've been doing for decades, you push, you probe, you pull, and no one really declares war. I want you guys to think cyber attack shutting down an entire city grid, disinformation campaigns, floating social media and dividing people, militias funded by foreign powers that are out there fighting wars on their behalf. Think Iran and Hezbollah. That's an awesome example of that. Iran is not physically there fighting, but they're funding all these different entities. That's gray zone warfare. It's messy, it's deniable, and it's taking place right now. When I was in Afghanistan, we also witnessed this firsthand. Keep in mind, in the 1980s, when the Russians were in Afghanistan, we went in and did something very similar. We funded, we by, with, and through operated through the insurgency that was fighting the Russians. The name escapes me right now, but that's where Osama bin Laden first, reared his ugly head, right? Was there. And through that partnership, we funded, we trained, and we ultimately defeated the Russians, right? The Mujahideen, that's who it was. Now, fast forward 2001, we're in Afghanistan doing work. Guess what the Russians did? They did the same thing that we did to them. They funded, they worked with the Taliban to eventually, look at what happened, we ended up leaving that country. That's gray zone warfare. Now let's talk about the role that Special Operation Forces play in gray zone warfare. Now, Green Berets and soft units are built for gray zone warfare. Our job isn't to just kick down doors. It's literally to shape environment before the war even starts, right? At any given time, you'll find a Green Beret team downrange conducting J-sets, right? You'll meet us downrange conducting FID. And it's not just because we want to go to these places and just hang out and freaking party with the locals. No, dude, like we're there to not only train the local partner force, but we're also there to hopefully shape their politics, right? We're there to influence that region. We're there to deter Russia, China, and all these other entities from gaining a foothold in that particular place. So just by our presence being there, we're denying everyone else the ability to come in. And if you think about it, Green Berets, we are on every single continent, right? And we're there for a reason. Asia, first group is over there doing what? J-set and FID. Why? To counter China's influence. 10th group, we're everywhere over there in Europe. Why? To counter Russia's influence. Third group, we're in Africa. J-set, FID, doing what? Countering China's influence. The Middle East, 5th group is there, countering Iran's influence. If we're not there, those guys are going to spread like wildfire and they're going to take over the globe before we know it. I remember in 2012, I was in Tajikistan. I was there for 3 months doing a FID mission, Foreign Internal Defense. That's when a group of Green Berets go down range. We link up with a partner force. We train them how to move, shoot, communicate, medicate. We are enhancing their military's capability. That's what we, the ground pounders, were doing. But at the same time, we had an embassy down there. We were rubbing elbows with their politicians. We were doing a variety of other tasks that I can't necessarily say on here to shape that nation, to develop that nation, to partner with that nation, because there might be a time where we, the United States, are going to come calling and say, hey, man, like, we need you to do X, Y, and Z because we've been in here helping you. Like, how could you say no? Right? While we're there, we're also countering the Russians because it just so happened that that piece of land used to belong to Russia. So they're heavily in there trying to influence that government also. And it's the warfare, the gray zone warfare that's taking place. They're pushing, we're pushing, we're pulling, they're pulling, and we're just going back and forth until something gives. And it doesn't just happen in the Middle East, right? Fast forward, we are in Latin America, 7th Special Forces Group, with everything that's going on now with the narco drug trafficking thing, right? Guess who's down there? 7th Special Forces Group. We're working with the Colombian military. We're working in Venezuela. We're all over the place. And we're doing the same thing, guys. We're denying other countries white space. We're keeping them at bay. We are influencing, because if we don't do it, they're going to take over the world. And again, guys, war isn't necessarily, hey, you cross this threshold and I'm going to push you back and then we're going to shoot at each other. That's the old school way of fighting wars. Things are changing. Now, I know what you're asking, Jay. Why does this matter? Why do we care? This matters because it changes how we think about defense, security, and even daily life tasks, right? Gray zone warfare is designed to confuse you, to make you question what's real, to weaken your trust in your own country, to divide people so they can easily be manipulated. And in the middle of this, guys, is Green Berets and Special Forces operators that are abroad countering all of this information, countering all of these offenses that is being pushed on us. Another good example of this, guys, was the 2016 election, right? What was going on there? Gray zone warfare. What shape did it take? It took the shape of election interference. Whether you think that took place or not, whether you think it didn't take place or not, that's not what we're discussing here. What we're discussing is the fact that for years, that was on the media. That was in everybody's iPad, everybody's radio, talking about how Russia interfered and essentially stole the election. Did it really happen? We don't care over here. That's not what we're discussing. We're just talking about a different form of warfare. All right. Now, you got to be aware of it if you have any chance of surviving it. Disinformation is a strong tool. If you look at what's going on right now within our country, guys, some may say that we are as divided as we've ever been before. And that's for a specific reason. It's because someone out there devised this plan. Someone out there wants us like this, right? And they are going to work to ensure that they accomplish their goal. Now, granted, we've made their job a lot easier. What's happened right now didn't happen on purpose, right? It was forecasted, it was planned, and it's being executed to a T by whoever that person is. You got to be aware of that if you're going to stand a chance. Because what I need you to understand, guys, is guess what? Gray zone warfare is here to stay. Disinformation is a powerful tool. It creates division. It creates fighting from within. If I have a tool that's this effective, why would I stop doing it, right? We do it in other countries. So now we're just getting a taste of our own medicine. And keep in mind, guys, this type of warfare isn't about holding territory, right? It's about getting real estate in your head and living there for as long as they possibly can until you ultimately destroy yourself, right? Let me know what you think about this one. What do you think gray zone warfare is? I want to hear you guys' definition of it. Before we transition into the next topic, guys, jump on there. Let me know. With all that said, let's get to the next one. Everyone sees the gear, the weapons, the night race, the kicking in the doors. But what they never see is what's happening up here. The mind of a special forces operator. What actually separates Saul from the rest isn't just muscle or marksmanship. It's mindset, right? The ability to stay calm when chaos is all around you. To solve impossible problems with no room for errors. And the ability to put your teammates, your mission, and the team above your well-being. Not everybody can do that, but it's a necessity. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain and we're gonna go over the mindset of a special forces operator and why those lessons matter way beyond the battlefield. And stay tuned, guys, because towards the end of my segment, I'm gonna bring my buddy on, Nick O'Reilly, a former first group special forces operator, to give you guys his feedback as it relates to the mindset of a special forces operator. When it comes to special forces, your mindset has the ability to make or break you, right? When people think of special forces, they think about fitness, endless runs, endless ruck marches, brutal workouts. And yeah, I get it, right? We got to be in shape, but there's more to us than just that. Here's the raw truth that a lot of guys don't want to hear, right? Plenty of guys show up physically ready, right? But at the end of the day, they still fail. Why? Because the battlefield is mental, right? It's littered with landmines that guys run over all the time. A lot of guys show up physically in shape, but they're not ready for the mental side of the game, right? Mental toughness is what separates soft from the rest. The ability to stay calm under chaos, to control your breathing, to issue out orders, to patch up your buddies when it's shot. It takes more than just physical attributes to be able to do that. I remember going to selection in 2008, right? And when I got there, I noticed all these big jack dudes that were running 10-minute 2 miles, right? I'm like, man, I can't run that fast. I'm a 14-minute, 14:30 type of guy on a good day, right? And I'm looking at all these guys and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give it all I got and we'll go from there. Those guys were in way better shape than I was. And I tell you what, guys, by the end of week 1, half of those dudes gone. Week 2, even more started falling off. Week 3, majority of them were gone. And the guys that were left behind, they weren't physical specimens. They just had the right mindset. They knew, hey, it's me against me. I'm not going against that dude. He can be in shape, right? But at the end of the day, is he mentally tough? Does he have what it takes as far as tenacity and grit? And most of those guys didn't. They did a lot of leaf work, but they didn't do any root work. Jay, what do you mean by that? They went to the gym and did all the physical things needed to look good on the outside, right? But as far as mental work, they didn't do any. And that's what caused them their ability to get selected. Well, that's good and all, Jay, but how do you build the strong mental mindset? How do you become mentally tough? It's pretty easy, guys. You get that through stress inoculation. What does that mean? You have to put yourself in hard situations. You have to make yourself do hard things. Keep in mind, guys, every part of Special Forces training is designed to stimulate the worst case scenario. So when it happens in real life, you're already exposed to it and you can just react, right? Sleep deprivation is a good way to do it, right? You're going to be cold. You're going to be hungry. You're going to be constantly moving with a lot of weight on your back. It's meant to create a situation that is not favorable. Now, when you go down range and you're exposed to it, guess what? It's all right because you've already gone through it in training under way worse situations. In training, guys, they'll pile on stress on top of stress until your body wants to give out, and your body is going to give out. But what you have control of is your mind. All right, guys, I remember going to SUT. I went to small unit tactics in February. It was cold. It was very cold. And I remember our cadre, he had us moving 8 kilometers at a time, digging foxholes, going into fire bases, and then blowing us up within the fire base. And we had to move location. We did that all night. I'm talking about while we're moving, you know, we're nice and warm, we're sweating. And then as soon as we stopped, it was freezing because now you're sweating and all that sweat is freezing. And I remember going, Jesus Christ, just make it in. We did that all night. Right? It sucked. But guess what? My body wanted to quit, but my mind, I just didn't have any quit in me, right? I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I just kept going. And eventually it did end, but that made me tougher for it. Because guess what? Fast forward, 2014, we're in Afghanistan and it's snowing. We're on the top of a mountain. It sucked, but I've already been exposed to that type of training before. So my body just reacted. It did what my mind wanted it to do. Now, I get it. Not everybody watching this is going to be in the military. Not everybody watching this is going to go through Special Forces assessment and selection, right? Not everybody watching this is going to go through the Q course, right? So here's what you can take from this as a civilian. Keep in mind, resiliency. You can learn to build resiliency because at the end of the day, life is going to push you to the edge. You might lose your job, right? Relationship might be broken. Your health might be going down. But if you train your mind to push one step further when everything feels impossible, you're building resiliency, right? If you tell yourself one more step, I'm going to get through this, your mind's going to listen to what you're telling it to do, right? If you're in the gym, you're fat, you're out of shape, one push-up at a time. Eventually, you're going to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, right? Resiliency is built by you telling yourself and making yourself do things that you don't want to do. All right, it's the same thing we do in the military, guys. We go through it and we become stronger for it. It's no different than what you may be witnessing or may be experiencing in life. Another thing that helps frame a operator's mindset is teamwork, right? We understand no operator succeeds alone, right? Missions are won when everyone does their job. We support each other. We have each other's six. We cover each other's blind spots, not just on the battlefield, but also back here in garrison. Right? It's a very, very good lesson to learn because, guys, you can try to make it on your own in the world, but eventually you're going to need support. Whether that support comes in the form of your family, whether that support comes in the form of your friends, or your leaders, you're going to need other people, right? That's why I encourage you guys over here to treat people the same way you would want to be treated, because eventually you're going to need someone to show up. And if you're a crappy friend or a crappy husband or crappy brother, they won't show up when you need them. And that's just going to put you in a bad place to where you're going to feel as if you're alone. You're going to hit depression, and it's just an overall horrible formula, right? So keep in mind, teamwork is important, but to be able to build a team around you, you also got to be a good dude. Another thing you guys can get from this as far as the mindset of a Special Forces operator, based on what I've learned, is, guys, on deployment, failure is not an option. When plans fall apart, you don't complain, you adapt, right? Civilians can learn the same lesson. When life hits, and it's going to hit, don't freeze, take action, even if it's a small one. Eventually, that small action is going to become a bigger action, and it's going to snowball. And before you know it, you're going to be adapting and overcoming whatever it is that you're going through, right? But you got to be in the right state of mind to be able to do this. You got to understand nothing you're going through right now is permanent. It's temporary, and eventually you're going to come out of it. So as we bring this one home, guys, I want you guys to understand this major takeaway, right? The mind of a Special Forces operator isn't about being fearless. It's about managing fear. It's about training yourself to stay calm when others are falling apart, to adapt to situation as they change, all right? And to put the mission above yourself. If you can do that, you'll be successful, right? That's what makes Special Forces operators different. And the best part is you don't have to be a Green Beret to understand this mindset, right? Resiliency, adaptability, humility. Those aren't military skills. They're life skills that anyone could train. Hell, I'm training my son on those right now, and he's 7. All right. So if he's able to get them, you should be able to also. Now I'm gonna bring on my buddy Nick O'Reilly from First Group, and he's gonna give you guys his 2 cents as far as building a strong mindset, having a mindset of a Special Forces operator, and he's going to elaborate on what's worked for him. Nick, please take it over.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you having me on. I'm Nick O'Kelly. You can find me on YouTube at the Nick O'Kelly. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about special operations and the mindset that makes special operations forces so effective and efficient. And the first thing I want to talk about is training, because throughout special operations, doesn't matter what branch, we are exposed to situations and scenarios where everything is designed to go wrong, right? And the intent behind that is learning about yourself through those situations, through those stressful situations, learning how you're going to react. Are you going to freak out, or are you going to remain calm under that pressure, right? So in the 160th, we have a saying, death waits in the dark. Okay. And it's a badass saying. It's meant to be, intimidation to the enemy. And it is, right? But at the same time, the knight doesn't care who you are, right? The knight doesn't care how badass your resume is or how good you think you are, right? It's still a very dangerous job to be operating these multi-million-dollar helicopters at night and in these situations, right? So the reality of doing a dangerous job is that it forces you to master one thing above everything else, and that's composure in chaos, okay? And that's not something that is like genetic. That's something that's trained. And it's trained just how I explained, by putting and exposing ourselves to the worst conditions. That's why you see special operations selections making dudes carry logs in the mud, and we shoot until our hands are raw. We do things for hours on end that suck and just are not fun. We're putting ourselves in these uncomfortable situations because the reality is there's missions that go to the 11th hour and beyond, right? And in those missions, we have to be calm and prepared to execute, even if we're exhausted, even if we're beat down. It doesn't matter. The mission still has to happen, and you still have to get the job done. So that's where that training comes into place. And the overall term for it is called stress inoculation. It's essentially exposing yourself to stress so that when stress comes up in a, fight or flight moment, a survive or die moment, you know how to react to that stress, remain calm despite all the chaos that is actually ensuing. Okay. And a good example of how we can use this and make it practical to real life is going to the gym, right? When you go to the gym, if you're working out hard, there's times where it sucks. There's times where you don't even want to walk to the gym. You don't even want to get in your car and drive 5 minutes down the road to the gym or whatever. But almost every single time without fault, after you do it, after you're done with your workout, you feel good and you're happy that you did that workout, right? So it's the same concept, right? You're putting yourself through something tough, even though you don't want to, for the benefit on the back end. And that's how special operations trains so effectively, because you're constantly putting yourself in these high stress situations in training, so that in reality, when it's real, you've already seen it or you've already been exposed to some version of it, right? All right. The next two traits, which are extremely important for these special operations units in general and for everybody to possess, are adaptability and humility. Now, that might seem pretty obvious, but egos can get people in a lot of danger, right? Especially if you have leaders who have an ego and aren't willing to take others' feedback. So a trait that I like to call it, it's kind of a hybrid, it's called humble confidence, okay? And it's the balance between capability and curiosity, because if you don't have curiosity and you're not willing to learn from others and grow as a person and an individual, then you're going to stay with your blinders on, and you're going to move one direction, right? You're not going to be flexible and adaptable like we talked about as an important trait, okay? So the best leaders I served with had confidence, but they weren't arrogant, right? They realized that their senior NCOs or whatever had more experience than them, and they were able to leverage and learn from their experience and take their feedback and their input when there were tough decisions that they might not have had the answer to. And that goes back to humility, right? You can't do that and not be a humble person, right? And especially in the soft world, when there's enlisted guys who have a lot more experience and time in the military than the officers do, but the officers are actually the decision makers. If they have that humble confidence, they're going to recognize that their NCOs, that they can lean on their NCOs, right? And they can learn from their NCOs, because their NCOs may have seen this situation before and may have seen a negative outcome of a decision, right? So they may be able to bring that experience to the table. Now, how can we relate all of this to the civilian world, right? So let's relate it to parenting, because it's a pretty universal thing, right? Nobody's a perfect parent. If you think you are, then, I mean, good for you, but I'm definitely not a perfect parent. But what do you do when you screw up, right? What do you do when you make a mistake, when you lash out on your kids and it wasn't justified, or, whatever. It wasn't the right time, whatever. Do you own it? Do you apologize and do you learn from it? Or do you let your ego get in the way? And do you say, that was justified. I'm his parent. I can do whatever the hell I want, and not learn from it, so that when that situation comes up again, this is to the adaptability, right? Adapt and overcome. But if you don't learn from it and you don't have the humility to recognize you made a mistake, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to change anything, right? And you're not going to better yourself or your kid's future, right? As kind of crazy as that sounds. But yeah, so I just want to wrap this up real quick. And if there's one takeaway, major takeaway, it's that you can be calm under chaos, but still human under pressure. Okay, what does that mean? That means you're going to feel the stress. There's going to be times when life is really stressful, right? But if you've done the work, the prior work, exposed yourself to these uncomfortable situations, then your body's a lot more resilient and a lot more willing, and your mind, and a lot more willing and able to overcome the stress that life is going to throw at you, whatever it might be. Okay. And then the second key takeaway is you can still be strong and take a break when you need it, right? Not giving your body and mind time to recover is one of the tried and true ways to experience burnout and chronic fatigue and chronic stress and go down a bad path, right? So having the self-awareness to know when you can push 110% and when you might need to take a break and throttle back to 70 or 80%, right? There's a lot of value in that. So I hope you got something out of this. And thanks again, Jay, for having me on. I'll give it back to you now.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's transition into another interesting topic. So Secretary of War, which again, I'm a fan of that title switch, right? Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, just stirred up the pot, right? He just put some guys on notice, right? And people are losing their minds over it, right? Like people on, the left are losing their minds saying, hey, how dare you call these generals fat? People on the right or losing their mind saying, yep, good job, I support you. Here in the middle, someone that served at the highest level, I'm going to give you guys my 2 cents. If you guys aren't tracking what Secretary Pete Hegseth said as it relates to fat generals, take a listen.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And that's why today at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done. Simply put, if you do not meet the male level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position.
Now, this brings up the question, guys. Should the Secretary of War fire fat generals? Should he do this? I want you guys to look at this from 2 different perspectives. Perspective number 1, those generals have so much knowledge in their heads based on what they've done throughout their military career. To fire all of them, or to fire majority of them, would do the country a disservice. It would do our military a disservice, right? So as it relates to that, I don't think he should fire them. However, I do think they should be held accountable for the good order and discipline that they are in charge of as far as running our military. Right? Guys, accountability. What does accountability mean? What's your definition of accountability? Let me know in the comment section, right? For me, accountability means doing the thing that you said you're going to do. And if you don't do it, dealing with the consequences, right? One of the affirmations that I have my son repeat in the morning is, as a man, you are responsible for everything you do and you will accept the consequences, right? I think it should be the same, right? As a general, you signed up to uphold the Constitution of the United States. You signed up to look a certain way. You signed up to represent the United States military. And that means doing the job, taking care of soldiers, looking the part. And if you don't, as it relates to good order and discipline and being physically fit, I think you should pay the price for it. Now, here are some of the criticisms that generals are getting. Guys, I retired not too long ago. I understand this and I agree, because the running joke within the military is once an individual goes past colonel, he's no longer part of the outfit. He's now politics and bureaucracy. I've heard that sentiment echoed over and over again. Like once you get to a 1-star, it's all political, right? I've heard that over and over again, and it shouldn't be the case, because I'm a firm believer in, hey, the higher your rank, the higher you could punch up to protect all the guys that are underneath your command. But that's not always the case. And I'm not saying that certain generals don't take care of their guys or they don't punch up in order to protect their guys. But when those generals do, they typically don't get advanced. The running joke is once you make general, now you got to start sucking dudes off so you can get in a political position to eventually get you in office once you retired out the military. That's the running joke, right? And the ones that don't play that game, they typically don't move up. And how that ties into the fat aspect of it is most of these generals, since they're so removed from the outfits, since they're so removed from the guys that they are charged of leading, they oftentimes lose sight of what's important, which is being in shape to where you can do your battlefield circulation and go run and gun with the actual soldiers. But if you're 200 pounds overweight and you can't even walk, like how are you supposed to do that? Right? That's a thing, guys. Like once they are removed, they no longer do PT, they no longer work out, and no one within their outfit could tell them like, hey, let's go run, sir. Let's go do this. Because the enlisted leaders are supposed to be the guys reinforcing the physical fitness standards. So they're technically supposed to be the ones telling that general, hey, sir, let's get your fat ass outside and do some PT. But oftentimes, those guys are trying to protect their careers also. So they're not doing that. So the generals are left to their own devices and thinking that they can just do whatever they want. Now, oftentimes, you'll have a guy that grew up living that life, right? He grew up as a physical fitness guy. So even though he's a general, he still finds time to go do it. But more often than none, those guys, once they get out of the limelight as far as colonels and they move to 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, they oftentimes lose sight of physical fitness. Let's just call a spade, right? We're not here to mend fences, right? It is what it is. If you fall within that realm, it is what it is. Do what you need to do. If you don't, hats off to you, right? I remember a few years back, we were discussing this, right? As a former first sergeant, I know there's certain actions, there's certain things, if the guys that were underneath my command did, I would punish them. One of them is, let's say a private loses a weapon system, right? Or they lose a pair of NVGs, or they get extremely out of shape to where they can't pass the APFT. As a first sergeant, I'm supposed to counsel those dudes and punish them. Yet, the quote, if I remember correctly, says generals are losing wars and nothing is happening to them. If instead they're getting promoted, right? So these generals think they can just do whatever they want and nothing happens to them. So that's the optic, guys. They are writing policies saying, hey, as a soldier within the military, you're supposed to meet the standards outlined in AR 670-1. You're supposed to look a certain way. You're supposed to wear this a certain way. You're supposed to be fit. Yet they're not fit themselves, right? It's hard, especially in the military, it's hard to listen to a leader that's telling you to do one thing, but yet they're not doing it themselves. At the lowest level as a private, I always used to, look up to my leaders, right? And I would always say, in my mind, I'm not saying this to my leaders, if you want me to do something, you also got to be willing to do it, right? If you're telling me to do PT and you're sitting in the office and you're not doing it with me, like you don't hold as much respect with me as somebody that's actually out there on the ground doing it with me. That's always been my train of thought. In my opinion, you should be able to handle the politics and be able to keep yourself in shape and lead all the guys underneath your command and figure out a way to advance without sacrificing you as an individual, right? You're a general. You should be able to figure that out. PT is one of the smallest tasks that you as a general is tasked with conducting, guys. If you can't handle that, like Pete Hegseth said, you start letting the little things slide. Next thing you know, the big things are going to start sliding also, right? But that's enough of my rambling, guys. I got a couple of different takes from a couple of different guys that I want to share with you. Let's first hear from Dell Comstock. Dell, what are your thoughts on these fat generals? Should they get fired?
Hey, Jay, to answer your question about should we fire the fat generals? And so here's my take on it, right? So I say, no, not yet. I say, give him a chance, right? Give him a chance. How long? I don't know, 6 months max, right? Being fat is a choice. Sorry, it's a choice. And don't tell me that, oh, the generals are really busy doing brain work. They don't have time to exercise. That's bullshit, okay? That's bullshit. I live in 3 countries. I have 3 homes. I have multiple companies, enterprises abroad. I do a lot of things on a daily basis to include podcasts. And I'm not too busy to go to the gym. In fact, I'm ready to go to the gym. That's why I'm wearing my shirt. Okay. And oh, he's wearing his tank top and his shirt. Now stop all that bullshit. Okay. I know that's what people do. They like, oh, he's got, look at his mustache. Hey, stop fucking analyzing my mustache and my clothes, okay, and my looks. Stop looking at the superficial shit and hear my fucking words, okay? That's more important. If all you can dial in on is a mustache and my fucking clothes and my muscles or whatever, and you calling me vain, all right, dude, then you got some serious issues, okay? That shot went right over your head. Focus on the substantive things, okay, not the superficial. And so where I'm going with this is, when we're talking about, substantive versus superficial, the argument is, well, generals, they're using their intellect, and they don't have time to work out, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's this bad news. When you're a general, you are still a soldier, okay? And as a general, you're expected to lead by example in every facet, right? So if we didn't care about image, for example, okay, leading by example and image, and we're okay with fatness, then why do we even bother putting on class A's and spacing all our ribbons perfectly and lining them perfectly the way they're supposed to? Why just throw that shit out the window? All right, then let's just do that. And as soon as you start doing that, guess what happens? When morale goes down, discipline starts to fade, everything starts to come apart at the seams. So we have standards for a reason. Pay attention to detail. That's really what we're talking about here, is attention to detail. Okay. And so when I see a fat officer, just like a fat person, I look at it like this: the outside's a projection of the inside. That's what it is. So you're telling me you're a really good person, you're really squared away, you know your shit, but you're fat. Okay. And don't lie to me and tell me it's because it's genetics. Okay. That's bullshit too. All right. I got a PhD in alternative medicine, natural health. And I've been a lifelong athlete. I've been a professional athlete, a professional soldier. I can tell you that's just a cop out. That's a lie. The reality is you're fat because you can't push yourself away from the dinner table, and you're eating the wrong damn food, and you're not exercising. Okay. So with the generals, I'm going to say the same thing. They need to lose the weight. Age is irrelevant. I'm 62. I have no problem with working out. I can probably run circles around 90% of the male population in the United States all day long. It's a choice. That's all it is. It's a choice. And it's important. It's important because we know that fitness affects brain function. There is literally a nexus between literally gut health and brain health. People that are fit and are in shape actually are more creative, are more intellectual, last longer, have more energy, are more focused. There's nothing but positive benefits to good health, to include longevity. In fact, it's the best medicine for longevity. It's the best medicine to fight any disease, is actually fitness. Okay. So to not work out, to let yourself go, that's just a cop out. That's an excuse, man. So with that said, generals, give them a chance, but if they don't put their shit in one bag, give them the pink slip and send them out the door. Last comments, a couple of things about some of the comments I read on here. Not that I normally pay attention to them. They don't actually bother me. I just kind of find them amusing sometimes. And the reason I don't bother me is because, I'm a sovereign man. I do what I want. Nobody's putting my roof over my head. Nobody's paying my meals, my food, paying me money, taking care of my family. I do that all by myself. So I really don't care about other people's opinions. I'm not afraid of getting fired or anything like that. But, what I did notice was, here's the other problem we have in our country. And what's amazing is how many people push back on Pete Hegseth and go, oh, he's fat shaming people. No, he's just calling people out for being fat. And it's not in any way is it consistent with Army values, or military values, and warfighting values, right? Fitness is an important factor. But two, I made comments last time about the state of the union and the state of the world that we are in, but really just what matters right now is America. And, I mentioned things like, we have Confederates within the ranks. Well, we have, yeah. So everybody right away called that as a dog, said that was a dog whistle, that I'm a closet racist, and the military is all racist. And okay, man, if that's what you believe, you're not smart enough to be on here and weigh in with a conversation. You can listen and try to learn something, but you probably shouldn't say shit until you actually look up the definition of Confederate. Because when I use the word Confederate, what I'm talking about is an actor that knowingly is trying to subvert an institution, an organization, the military, society, a corporation, whatever it is. It's an active participant that is trying to intentionally sabotage or undermine the performance of said entity. Okay, that's what Confederate means. Not in the sense that, we got a bunch of rebels from the Confederacy in the ranks. Okay, but when we have that kind of intellect weighing in on opinions, and they're not educated enough to really make a smart opinion, but they make a lot of noise. That's the problem. That's where we are today. I can go on and on about some of the dumb shit that was some of the comments were made by and I know some of them were bots. But I think it's important that people understand. If you don't understand something, at least learn about it. And before you actually make a comment, and rather than coming at me hard, and trying to trying to insult me or shit, pay me in a bad light or something like that. Have a civil conversation, ask some questions. I don't mind civil discourse. But when I get and I don't get a lot, but when I have people coming at me with some weird shit, calling me a racist and blah, blah, blah. Let me just, for the record, because I've said this before, I'm not a racist. I don't have to defend myself. And in no way is this defense. This is just a statement of fact. Okay. I've got Black children. My wife is Asian. My wife is Muslim. I have Muslim children. I'm actually Catholic. It's not about racism or religion or anything like that for me. I judge everybody on their merits. Okay. But of course people want to twist that around along with the mustache and, he's wearing a tank top and he's showing his muscles. Now I'm actually getting ready to go to the gym. And so anyways, the moral of the story at the end of the day is, man, we got to do better. Everybody's got to do better. And, use the critical thinking skills, and really, really look at the world, not only objectively, but look at certain things subjectively, because there's a lot of lies and misinformation, malinformation, disinformation out there, and you got to sift through that. If you're going to be lazy and just take all your information from the headlines of whatever news channel, right, you're going to be poorly informed. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I don't mean to lecture people, but there's a lot of resources out there where you can actually do the work, learn something, and then arrive at your own conclusions. My conclusions are mine. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. I'm just stating my facts, the way I see it, my perspective. That doesn't mean in 10 years it doesn't change, but right now, here and now, this is what I see, and this is my opinion. So, and then the last thing, I mentioned, I mentioned a couple of things last time, and some people got all up in arms over it, like, oh my God, he's talking about turning guns on other Americans. Let me state this. All right, not everybody's an American. We have real Americans, we've got pseudo Americans, and we've got illegal immigrants. Okay, and we've got an enemy within the wire. And when I say we have the enemy within, I literally mean the enemy is within the country. Okay, we do have terrorists. I happen to know that for a fact because I was already informed by DOJ. Al-Qaeda is actually looking for me in America. They've been to my neighborhood. They've been to my house. I have eyewitnesses, and the police actually stepped up law enforcement because they've also witnessed it. All right, so they're there. Cartels are there. Okay, they're targeting a lot of people I know intentionally for a lot of different reasons. So we've got those. Then we've got the homegrown terrorists, right? So we've got the enemy within. Those are the same people that want to kill Donald Trump, kill Charlie Kirk. Going on and on with the list. These are the people that are invoking violence to further their political agenda, right up to the political level. Okay, so yes, the enemy is within, and I have no problem defending my country from without and from within. I took that oath when I first joined the military. There's no statute of limitations on that. And so, yeah, we have bad actors in our countries, that pseudo-Americans that would undermine our country, undermine your freedom, take your freedom from your children, and destroy everything that we worked for and fought for, that our forefathers have fought for, my father fought for, I fought for, my son has fought for. It's insane that we would, people would go, how dare he say there's enemy within? What does that mean? Like, hey, stupid, we're not talking about, a Red Dawn, the Russians or the Chinese parachuted into our country. We've got running around the place. Our enemy looks just like everybody else. They're wearing the mask. Carl Jung said everybody has a mask, right? The shadow self. And we have a lot of masked bad guys out there that just look like your neighbors. But I'm not trying to make people paranoid. I'm just trying to make people aware, especially those. And there were quite a few comments like, what does that mean? We have the enemy within. Man, if you don't understand that, you should probably stand back, go read some books, do some work, and gain a better understanding, because your freedom hangs in the balance. It hangs in the balance. The more knowledge is power, but learning is superpower, man. The more you can learn, the more you can understand about the world, the better off you will be. I've lived in, traveled to, or worked in over 101 countries. Over 101. I've seen the world. I know what people think about us, what they don't think about us, how they view us. I understand their cultures, and honestly, not everybody's our friend. And people would relish in the idea of watching us fall, and that's what they're doing. They're watching us. They're watching us from within destroy ourselves, and this was deliberate, by the way. It's just not because we all disagree. It's because brainwashing has been in place for a very long time. You can go past Saul Alinsky. It actually started probably closer to the turn of the 1900th century. Started with the general education system with John Rockefeller when he started in 1913. He literally watered down the education system on purpose, by the way. So, this is not something that happened in the last 4 years. In fact, 25 years ago when I left the military, it's one of the reasons I left, because DEI was already there. We took the Black Berets from the Rangers. I say we, Shinseki, General Shinseki did that. Gave Black Berets to everybody so they could feel good about themselves, even though they didn't earn it. We wanted them to feel good about themselves. We had stress cards introduced at basic training. Basic training didn't have to pass a PT test. They just go to the unit, and supposedly their squad leader, platoon sergeant's going to whip them in shape. Guys didn't have to pass a swim test to come to special forces, right? Supposedly, like I had a water team. They're just going to show up and I'm going to teach you how to swim overnight because tomorrow we're going to go to combat. It actually made no sense. It's all political. There's an agenda here. And it's slowly been creeping in, and now we're at terminal velocity. I think we're at a point now where I don't think we can turn this thing around. I'm hoping that Trump and Hegseth does that. It saves our country, but I got a feeling the next 4 years are going to be like no other time in history, man. It's going to be tumultuous, and America may not survive this at this point because the enemy is within, and they're doing everything they can to undermine the system, undermine the republic, undermine the process of the laws, the leadership, and people just don't give a shit, And so that kind of brings me full circle back around to the military. The military has become a social experiment. People just didn't give a shit. People just kind of, whatever the standards, people just got fat. They're out of shape. When you have soldiers in uniform on TikTok, and you have them on TikTok undermining their chain of command and the military and the United States government, it's very telling where we are. And we have lost our way. And the only way we're going to get that back is some of us out here have got to do our part and try to get these people back in alignment, whatever it takes, man, because if we don't, we're going to lose everything that, all our forefathers, my father, probably your fathers, my son, maybe your sons, daughters have fought for and have worked to preserve is going to be gone like that. So anyways, that's a long way around the question. Should we fire fat generals? But, the problem with fat generals, it's symptomatic of something bigger. So I just want to kind of address all that. Hate me or love me, I don't care. I have an opinion, as you do, and at least I can back my opinions with facts. I'm happy to debate people, but if you want to debate, let's do that. But don't try to make me out to be a fool, because I'm far from that. And we can get a lot further down the road and be much more successful and productive if we would just all learn to listen, analyze, and then arrive at our own our conclusions and act civilized. So anyways, thanks again, Jay. Hopefully that answered your question.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Dale, for sharing that. Now I have Jake, former 03 on the Navy SEAL side. Jake, what are your thoughts? Should these fat generals get fired?
All right, folks. The generals got together and had a meeting. Really, Hegseth and the president were ripping some ass in the meetings. Man, let me tell y'all something. You guys saw an hour of the meeting. There was 3 hours behind the scenes of conversations, and some of the stuff that came out of there, boy, it's going to make the military better. We're getting rid of all the fruity tooty, rainbows and lollipops. All them cats getting out the military, man. The next thing, get rid of fat generals. Boy, if you overweight, you better get your weight under control. I think they're giving them 6 months. Hey, listen, them subscriptions to Ozempic are about to go off the chart. Let me tell y'all something. We've already seen a rash of generals turning in the letters of resignation. They're deucing, okay? I had a couple guys in that meeting, man. It was pretty telling. They said it was eye-opening. They're refreshed to be in the Army. If you got the right mindset and you're a hard charger, go-getter, then you're probably going to be fine. If you're one of them fat dudes that's been living life on the edge, eating ho-hos and ding-dongs all day, not good for you, okay? None of my guys seem to be that concerned about what was said in there. We also know that's on a 4-year cycle. So, they did away with DEI, all this other stuff. I'm going to tell you, there's some stuff that came out in this meeting that was absolutely refreshing to me. Refreshing. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to turn nobody in. I'm not going to release any information that was said in the meeting. But I'm just telling you, all you folks out there that are hating on misrepresentation, understand this. I think these two dudes absolutely have the country's best at heart, and they're trying to make the military a better place. I'm all in on this road, just telling you right now. All the shenanigans, all the non-common sense stuff that's been going on for the last 15 years, Trump was involved in some of that on the first go-around, but this is a different dude now.
All right, what's going on, guys? So Jay reached out to me, thanks Jay, and asked me if I would be willing to provide a professional opinion on whether or not I think that generals in the military should be relieved if they're not currently meeting body composition or physical readiness standards. And I think, first of all, it's a very blunt question, right? But I also think it's a very important question, and I think it's actually more complicated than it seems on the surface. So I'm going to do my best to give you a very professional and well thought out opinion on this matter. And I'm going to start it off with getting into standards and credibility. Okay, so we've all heard the term lead by example, and I very much believe in that. I think if you're going to be a leader in the military, you have to follow the rules, the regulations, and the example that you want your juniors to, or your subordinates to follow, right? You can't expect them to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. And I think that comes into play tremendously here, right? So soldiers are going to notice, especially the lower level soldiers, are going to notice any inconsistencies between the junior and the senior ranks, especially when it comes to something that's as easily noticeable as body composition or physical readiness. You have to understand, like, think about it. If you were to see somebody who presents themselves as a very physically fit person, they're going to instantly get credibility, because they're going to look healthy. They're going to look ready to take on any physical challenges that might be presented to them. And in the military, there's a lot of physical challenges that might be presented to the military, right? And that is huge when it comes to leadership and following certain standards that have been set by the military in order to remain ready and credible, right? So that's all really important to understand. So lead by example, I think, is one of the biggest things we're looking at here. Now, when we're talking about the most senior of senior leaders, the generals, right? It's also important to understand that leadership is a lot more than just fitness and body composition. Senior leaders are responsible for huge decisions that need to be made at the strategic level, and they're running enormous organizations filled with, thousands of troops, on a day-to-day. So they're doing some high-level decision-making, and their days are filled to the brim of things that they're responsible for. Fitness just being one of them. Not to say that fitness is not a priority, because it is, especially according to regulations that say everybody, in the military, regardless of position or rank, has to follow a certain standard, right? So it doesn't matter where you're serving, but you know, they have a lot on their plate. And I think it's just, we have to consider that. That's very important to consider that. And that we can't reduce leadership to just body composition and fitness, the score you get on a PT test. Somebody scores well on a PT test, that's a good leadership trait because it shows that you're adhering to the standard, and it shows that you care about standards, and it shows that you care about yourself. However, it doesn't necessarily automatically make you a good leader. It's just part of it. All right. So that's also really important to understand. Now, I think really what this boils down to and how we can like get after it as a force, right, is touching on accountability and, again, the standards of it all. The standards that have been put forth by the military, regardless of branch. They all have their own standards. The body composition rules and regulations are to be adhered to by all service members. It doesn't matter your rank, it doesn't matter your position. There's one standard, and that's what needs to be met. That standard in a lot of different branches, or depending on where you're serving, might not necessarily even be that high, but there is a minimum threshold that you have to adhere to. And if you meet that minimum threshold, you come out to be a decently fit person, I would say. So now, that doesn't mean that we need, all that to say is just saying that these senior leaders shouldn't be expected, and it wouldn't make sense to expect them to be some sort of like elite athlete, right? They don't have to be at elite athlete level. They just have to at least meet the standards. And that's not, again, it's not just me saying this, not even necessarily my opinion. That is what the regulation says. And again, if they are in the power and position to enforce those standards, and they have to be upheld to those standards as well. Again, nothing new, nothing we didn't already know, okay? So I think if there is a gap that exists between standards and those serving in a senior position where they're responsible for enforcing those standards across the board, then it's definitely worth reviewing. But I'm not really sure if it should be policy driven, and it definitely shouldn't be reactionary, and it definitely shouldn't be like emotionally charged or driven. It's all about opening up the books and saying, hey, look, here's the standard right here. You have to meet that standard. You have to. Otherwise, you have to be held accountable just like everybody else. And that's really what it boils down to. So, when it comes to fitness, I think that has a huge part to play in the military culture as a whole. I think leaders, we need leaders who can think, who can command, and who can inspire the mass of the troops. And I think fitness plays a huge role in that for all the different reasons that I've already talked about. And so I think holding all ranks, including the senior ranks, accountable to this standard that I keep touching on in a respectful and professional way, just like we would for anybody else, is really the answer here. All right, so that's my 2 cents on the whole thing. Again, I've mentioned this before, that I don't really think this is anything new that's going on. It's just been more blatantly brought to light, and the regulations, as far as I understand, haven't changed, and I don't even think they need to be changed. They just need to be upheld to, enforced, and the military will keep rolling on just like it has been. And I think it's important for all ranks within the military to understand what those standards are and keep adhering to those standards to the best of their ability. And what you really want to do is exceed the standard. And that way you never have to even come to this place where we're questioning it in the first place. That's, for me, every time I was coming up on a PT test or something, I never thought about what was the minimum standard so that I could just pass. No, it was, how can I achieve a way above the standard so I'd never even have to worry about meeting that minimum standard? That's really the mindset. That's the key right there. That's what you need to be working towards. So I do hope that was helpful to anybody that's watching this. I know there's not a lot of emotion in this, but I think emotion should be taken out of this because it's just not an emotional topic. It is a very standard driven topic, and that's the way it should be because it is the military, and this is a very professional organization that we're talking about, and there's a lot of things that go into the culture that makes it a positive culture to be a part of, and fitness is absolutely one of the pieces to that. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. See you guys later.
Awesome. Appreciate your take. Guys, let us know, should these fat generals get fired? Appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts with us. Let's transition to the last topic. All right, so you're one of these fat generals, right? And you just got the boot. What are you going to do when your identity of being a military man ends and now you're in the civilian world just free falling? Right, guys, I know when I got ready to separate from the military, I didn't know what to do. Right? Because for the last 20 years, I've been in jail, right? That was my identity. So most guys, when they get out, you know, similar to when a guy that's been institutionalized in jail, what does he do? He goes and commit a crime so he can go back to jail because that's what he knows. That's his norm, right? Pretty similar to some military guys, right? They do 20 plus years, they get out, you either find them contracting or some other method that ties them to the military. All right, so as I was getting out, that was something that I struggled with because the military was my identity, right? The team was who I was for the last 20 years. So I had to reinvent myself. I had to find another way to break free of that and become the person that I am today or be where I am today. I'm going to share some of that with you guys. So I remembered when I left my team for the first time and I went to SWIC. I went to the schoolhouse to be an instructor. I remember leaving. I had been on that team for so long, you know, that was who I was at that time. And I was like, I missed it, right? So during my lunch hour, I would find myself back in the team room, hanging out and talking with the guys and bullshitting as if I was still part of that team. And it took me a while to completely break free from that and realizing that, you know what, team already has my replacement. Like, I need to move on, right? It's the same concept. When I got ready to leave the military, I would still, you know, go back to the old company where I used to be a first on that, and I would hang out and talk to the guys. And then eventually it's like, man, like, what is going on, right? I had to find my new mission. And that's something that a lot of guys don't know how to do is once the military ends, I look at it as, hey, a chapter is ending, right? That is, you know, chapter 4 of the book that is the book of J. Dorleus, right? That was just one chapter. Now I need to start writing the next chapter. A lot of guys don't know how to transition successfully, right? Because they didn't adequately prep. They didn't adequately put themselves in a financial situation to where they can, I guess, cut sling load and move on. And I'm not saying, you know, going GS and contracting is not beneficial. I'm not saying that that's something that you shouldn't do. By all means, that's what you want to do it, right? But I know there's a lot of guys that are away from the military installations that don't have that option. And the reason why we suffer from, I guess, a lack of purpose is, you know, for the last however long, your purpose was to defend the Constitution as a soldier. Once that title has been removed from you, now you have to find something else to fill that gap. You need to find your purpose. That's the number one advice that I give to everybody. Once you leave, you need to have your next mission, right? Because if you don't, you're going to find yourself struggling. For me, pretty simple. I wanted to coach, teach, and mentor. I wanted to give back. I wanted to help young men and women. That's what I wanted to do, right? And that's what I've been doing since I've got out. On the topic of mission, on the topic of purpose, it has to be fulfilling, right? You have to like what it is that you're doing. You have to get something from it. And again, that something could be money. Maybe money's fulfilling for you. For me, it's just hearing individuals that I speak with get to the next level. That's what's been helping me out. So if you're looking to transition now as one of these fat generals, right? Make sure your next task is finding something that fulfills you, something that gives you purpose. Because if you don't, guys, a lot of vets suffer from depression, right? They leave the military, they don't know what to do with themselves, and now they're depressed, right? They are gloom and doom. They're feeding into the nonsense, right? You have to find a way to keep yourself away from that. And there's several different ways you can do it, guys. There's several different programs that the military has in place to ensure that you go on a positive path, right? You can go be a teacher. You can go to us police force. You can go to CIA. You can go FBI. Yeah, there's a variety of things that you can do if your thing is run and gun. That's going to give you that purpose. That's going to give you another identity, right? Don't just get out and become one of these depressed dudes that's just lagging, that just sucks at life all the time. There's things out there you can do. You just have to realize that, hey, once I got out, the military section or the military life is over. That wasn't my entire identity. I can do more, right? And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can go on a path and establish and figure out what that more is. But you have to realize that. One thing that helped me out a lot as I was getting in transition was I knew 10 years out, I knew that my military career was going to end one day. So what did I start doing? I started prepping for it financially. All right. So that's another advice I have for you guys. Don't wait until you're 2 years out to realize like, oh, I got to get out in 2 years. Right. And now you're stuck. Right. You're limited as far as options, as far as people you can go work for. Forecast the fact that your military career is going to end eventually and put all the right pieces in place to where when it does end, you could just move to the next thing, whatever that next thing is. And last but not least, guys, when you get out, make sure you maintain some of the things you learn in the military, whether that's discipline, integrity, and resiliency, right? Make sure you maintain all of those because they apply in the civilian world, right? Guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope this segment was helpful. We covered a lot. Appreciate you guys tuning in, guys. Until next time, take care of yourself.